welcome once again to Cinemaholics. I'm John Negroni. I am the box office columnist for Adam Tickets and head writer of Cinemaholics.com. He is a pop culture writer for Cinema Blend, and he also reviews films for Cinemaholics.com. It's Will Ashton.
Hello.
You can find more episodes of Cinemaholics, including our full archive, on Cinemaholics.com. Write into the show anytime, send us an email, tell us what's on your mind. Our email is cinemahawkspodcast@gmail.com. And if you are interested in becoming a patron of our show, you can always donate to our Patreon on patreon.com/cinemaholics. Special thanks to all of our patrons who continue to support the show as we enter 2020. So this is our second official episode of the year, but we're still
of the decade.
Of the first of, or the second of the decade, yes. I keep thinking like that last episode never happened, maybe because it was so long. It was a blur.
It's still going on.
Yeah, that's right.
Sam's here. Hey, Sam.
All right. We're going to be talking about quite a few movies this week, including Just Mercy and Underwater, Togo, Like a Boss. A lot of great stuff to get to. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's great. Maybe it's not. We'll find out. But a lot of great conversations to get to. How about that?
Sure. That's a good recovery.
But a couple off topics to get to. First, we have a special bonus episode out. Sam Nolan and I sat down and we did the unthinkable. We ranked all the Star Wars movies without killing each other. That's right. We went through all the films. We went through our favorites, our not favorites, and we came up with a definitive ranking combining both of our lists using science and persuasion, all that fun stuff. So I know
it's like nerd stuff.
Will, we weighed your options in. You can't be too salty. We definitely looked at your list and made some decisions based on your favorites too.
I feel like you reviewed my list the same way that Disney reviewed George Lucas's plans for the new trilogy.
You say this after you look at the list, which is published on cinemaholics.com. But yeah, you can check that out either in written form. It is on cinemaholics.com right now, or you can listen to the entire episode where Sam and I talk about the movies themselves, why they are in certain places on our list. It was a fun Star tour through that universe, and it was a lot of blast. It was a lot of fun, and it was a blast to talk about those films in light of Rise of Skywalker, kind of revisiting what we love about those movies. But I think, Will, you express a sentiment I'm kind of feeling right now as well, which is I'm kind of tired of Star Wars right now.
I am definitely, I'm concurrent to your ranking. I have also just, I guess for the heck of it, have decided to revisit most of the Star Wars movies in the past, I guess going on a month now. And I'm just between the discourse and that, I'm really tired of Star Wars. I could take a 10-year break on Star Wars, I think. Right.
Rebuild your midichlorians and
sure. But I say that, but I'm sure at some point I'll watch The Mandalorian. So
yeah,
we'll see how long that lives.
You have time before the next season comes out.
Maybe,
and I've been watching the Clone Wars series, and that's starting to wear me out. I've been rewatching a couple other Star Wars films, and I also I've been playing that video game, Jedi Fallen Order, which I say this too. I'm like, I'm getting tired of Star Wars. Anyway, I'm playing this video game about Star Wars, and it's so good. But I definitely need to take a break from it soon. But all right, we didn't talk about any new films last week because we were busy talking about the films of 2019 that we loved. Mm-hmm. And a movie came out called The Grudge, and just want to give it a quick little shout out because some people might have been curious what we thought of the film. Neither of us saw it though. This was the new film written and directed by Nicholas Pesce, who is better known for writing horror films. He's best known probably for Eyes of My Mother and Piercing.
Well, he directed those too.
He directed them too? I thought he just wrote them.
Nope.
Okay, my mistake,
believe if I this is a rumor, but I think I heard somewhere that going on set for Eyes of My Mother was like the first time he was on a movie set.
No
which
kidding.
Is pretty insane.
Huh.
Yeah. He's only like 29 or something, so he's a pretty young guy.
I think that's why I thought he was only a screenwriter. So yeah, my mistake. And I just looked it up. He did direct and write them. So apologies. Eyes of My Mother was his first film. So
right, and I believe I reviewed Piercing at one point on this show.
I think I remember that. Yeah. Because that's a 2018 film, and I don't think you saw it like right when it came out, but I remember you talking about it.
Yeah, I remember when it got a North American release outside of the festivals, but I don't think it had a particularly wide release outside of like VOD.
Yeah, we were kind of interested in this one. a while ago because it's produced by Sam Raimi, and it has a really good cast. I mean, John Cho, Jackie Weaver, Betty Gilpin, Andrea Riseborough. But the reviews came out, and this is, of course, a remake, and I've heard terrible things about this film. It's another remake because there was the 2004 version, which is, I think, kind of okay. I know some people really like that film, but but then the original Japanese film is incredible. It's probably a classic. So I don't know. Do you just decide not to watch this one because of the reviews, or are you planning on seeing it soon?
Well, indirectly because of the reviews, because what happened was yesterday I was actually going to check it out with a friend of mine. We're both big horror fans, and we were talking about seeing it, and I just mentioned like, hey, do you want to see this, The Grudge, or Underwater? And he was like, I'll have to get back to you. And then he's like, hey,
is your friend Sam Raimi?
If only our friends, which Sam Raimi, that would, I don't even know. I wouldn't even be here. I would be hanging out with Sam Raimi because
podcasting from his place.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I was talking to him, and he was just like, well, The Grudge has a 17% on Rotten Tomatoes, which I didn't even realize was that low. I was just like, oh, geez. I was just curious in seeing the new Nicolas Pesce film, or Pesce, or how I pronounce his last name. But yeah, so we end up seeing Underwater instead. But I'm kind of curious to check it out. I have AMC A-list now, so maybe if I'm free one night and it's still playing in theaters, I might give it a view. I actually started watching the original Japanese film because I've never seen it before. And it's all right so far. I'm curious to finish that. But yeah, my only real familiarity was the first American remake. Like you mentioned, the one with Sarah Jessica Parker, if I'm remembering correctly. It's been a little bit since I've seen it. Yeah. I remember it being okay.
Yeah, so. No, I think it's sorry, it's the other Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Oh, you're right. Yes, that's that's what I meant to say, but I said the wrong name. That's a weird thing.
I think even I registered it at first too, but then I was like, wait a minute, no.
I saw Sarah Michelle Gellar's face, but I said Sarah Jessica Parker's name. So I
did the same. The Japanese version is I think it's part of an ongoing series.
Yeah, I actually think the director of the Japanese one did the one with Sarah Michelle Gellar, if I remember correctly.
Takashi Shimizu, I think is his name.
Sure.
Yeah, he directed the American version, and also produced by Sam Raimi, right? So
right.
I thought this might be an interesting kind of reboot, but yeah, everything I'm hearing is that it's just a total misfire, which kind of explains why it's coming out in January, which is the month movies go to kind of quietly die.
Especially the first weekend is like this weird thing where it's like, I don't know when it started, but it's like this trend where like the first movie of the year, like that first weekend is always a horror movie that sucks.
Right, like that Natalie Dormer Forest movie, and then what was last year?
It was Escape Plan, which actually got okay reviews.
Yeah, so, actually, I liked Escape Room a lot.
I didn't see it, but
I wonder if there's another one too. There was Insidious.
Well, The Devil Inside was a pretty big one. The found footage one.
Yeah. So there's always something, but this movie's making good money. It's like a $30 million box office, and it's a horror movie, so it's pretty low budget, probably around like 10-15 million. So it's not a disaster for, I think Sony is the one who released this, but yeah. So that's The Grudge, a movie neither of us saw, which I'm surprised we talked about it this long.
Sure.
Another movie that hit wide release this week, so a lot more people had time to see it, is 1917, which is the World War I film directed by Sam Mendes. It's on my top 10 films of the year list. Film you didn't quite like as much, but as I did. Yeah. But I think, did it make your honorable mentions? Or was it like, didn't. Okay, it was like probably right outside.
Pretty far highest in the top 50.
Oh man, Jesus. Well, I maintain that 1917 is incredible, but yeah, there is a weird divide on this movie where I'm not seeing a ton of middle ground. I'm seeing a lot of like, it's either one of the best movies of the year or it's trash, basically.
I'm neither. I think it's competently well made. I just don't particularly think it's an engaging or particularly noteworthy film outside of the technical merits.
Well, I'm happy a lot of people are disagreeing with you and agreeing with me so far. Well, people are watching this movie and it's getting a lot of awards recognition. It's starting to become a huge Oscar frontrunner. And I think it's great because, I'm obviously on the other side of that argument. I think it's incredible. But speaking of films that have a divide, I want you to talk about another film that you did see, A Hidden Life, which I gave a pretty poor review. The review was poor, but I thought poorly of the film. But
Sure.
it's your turn. What's the
Well,
second opinion
I
of
think there
Terrence
is
Malick's?
overlap in what you're saying because I think it was a poor review as well because I think it's a very good film.
Of course, right.
I'm teasing, of course. I mean, you're entitled to your opinion, wrong though it might be.
Oh, weird. I was just thinking the same thing,
Sure.
but
I mean,
directed it.
I don't mean to be salty. Here's my thing: is honestly, like I get people who don't like Terrence Malick films. Like they're not for everybody, especially this one, which is about 3 hours long and it's a fairly meditative film, and I can see why it's not going to appeal to everyone's sensibilities, but I just feel bad, honestly, that you can't get the same thing. I mean, when people don't like his movies, I just feel bad. Like, it's just like, to me, like, this is one of those films. Like, I remember when you, reviewed Call Me By Your Name, you were talking about, like, it was one of those movies that you could, like, kind of, like, feel the senses of. Like, you could feel, like, the air and smell it. And that's how I felt with this movie. And it was, I don't know. I mean, it's not a perfect film by any means, but I think the way it's shot, especially seeing in theaters, which I'm very glad I got a chance to see it this way. I was really moved and taken by it. Not as much as Tree of Life, but certainly more so than the last three films that preceded it. Or that followed it. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I'm between a B plus and A minus on it. It's one that I don't know if it would be in my top 10 for the end of the year for 2019, but absolutely would be an honorable mention. Yeah, I really was taken by it as I expected to be. So sorry you can't say the same, John.
You know, no worries, because I got 1917. You got A Hidden Life. We both had a great time at the movies. They were just different movies, and that's what matters, right? So
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah, not every movie can be for everyone. So we just have to remember that. And there's plenty of people who agree with you on Hidden Life, and that's great.
Sure. I would love to see it at least get a cinematography nomination. I guess we'll find out by the time this episode comes out. We'll know what the nominations are. But
that's right. Yeah. As we record this, I think we're basically hours away.
Sure.
So there's another movie you saw though from last year, pretty recently. I'm very curious about this one because I've heard amazing things. It was on my list of 2019 movies to catch before 2020. Did make the cut for me, but now you're catching up on it. What is it?
Yeah, just a couple hours ago, I got a chance at work to see Varda by Agnès, which is the newest and final film from the late filmmaker Agnès Varda, who I'm not quite sure if she's a household name. I would say not unless you are a cinephile, which, I mean, would make sense if you're listening to the show. But yeah, she's a very influential and distinctive French filmmaker.
Yeah, she might have been a household name like years ago.
Sure.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, back in her heyday, like she never stopped being great, but you know, like I think there was a time when way more people didn't know her.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think her most famous film is Cleo from 5 to 7, which is her sophomore film, if I remember correctly.
I think that's right.
We actually showed that today as well, but unfortunately I didn't get a chance to see that one. But yeah, I mean, before seeing this film, my only real point of reference to her work was her previous film, which is Faces Places, which is another documentary she made. And this film, I think, is meant to kind of be more of a, look back on a career, and then you get to see her reflections on her filmmaking process and the choices she made. And her most famous films are the ones that stuck with her the most from a personal level and a creative level. But I think it's also a very fine introduction to her work. I mean, if you're not quite as familiar like me going into this, I do think this is a pretty good reflection of the creative process and also how one's life can be reflected in their work. And I do think this is quite a good film, and I can see why it made a couple top 10 lists. I don't know if I'm quite that high on it. I'd probably give it like a high B, maybe a low B plus, but yeah, I could definitely see why people are being moved and taken by the film. And, it's certainly a worthy tribute to such a well-known and famous filmmaker. And yeah, I hope you get a chance to check it out, John. It's quite a nice little film.
Yeah, I think that anyone listening to this who loves film history, who really just want, or maybe they don't yet, or maybe they don't know that much about it yet, if you want an education on who Agnès Varda was, everything I've heard about this documentary is that it really does take you on a vivid journey through her films and through what it took to make her films. And yeah. That's why I want to see it. It just seems like it's going to add a lot of context to a couple movies that I already love and some movies I need to see as someone who claims to love film. And I think that she's one of our all-time great filmmakers. And I know plenty of people listening to this show love like the medium, you know, like they're not just here to watch the next movie of the week. They want to also catch up on what's come before it. And this seems like a good ticket or a good entryway into her career. So to make it maybe a little bit more accessible for some people who might be more intimidated by her filmography, because it is pretty vast in terms of quality and quantity.
Yeah, and I want to note that, I mean, I don't know for sure if she knew this was going to be her last film, but I mean, when she passed, she was 90, and so I had to imagine she knew her time was coming. But I will say the film isn't filled with any sense of like sadness or remorse. It's very vibrant and full of life, and it definitely, I think, is one that I think it will appeal probably mostly to cinephiles, but I think it could have a pretty wide audience if you're willing to check it out.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is Varda by Agnès. Let's get into our official reviews, our big uns. We're going to start with the only movie you and I both saw, which is Just Mercy. Just Mercy is technically a 2019 film. It had a limited release in, I think, New York and LA back in December, like late December.
An awards qualifying release.
Right, exactly. This is Warner Brothers, and this one's been on both our radars for a while because it comes from director Destin Daniel Cretton, one or the other.
Yeah.
And he is probably best known for Short Term 12, but I think he also did The Glass Castle.
Yeah, that was the one after that.
Yeah.
And then I'm Not a Hipster is the other film. I think that was his debut.
Okay. Yeah, because Short Term 12 was 2013. And then all three of these
Was
films
it really that long ago?
Oh, yeah. That was a long time back. And
was it? Really?
Yeah.
No, I'm pretty sure that's like 2015.
No. Short Term 12 is 2013.
Oh, sorry, Short Term 12. I thought you were talking about Glass Castle. I'm sorry.
No, Glass Castle is 2017 because we talked about it
that's
on
what
the
I thought.
show.
I was going to say, yeah, I thought Glass Castle was fairly recent.
Yeah. I didn't see Glass Castle. That was a film that Andy Herndon liked a lot. You did not care for it.
We had a pretty heated discussion about that one.
Right. And I was disappointed to hear that for sure, because obviously everyone
it bummed
knows
me out.
I'm a big Brie Larson fan. I think she and Cretton have done great collaborations. And this is their latest, but she's not the front line, or the headliner for this film. That belongs to Michael B. Jordan and Jamie Foxx decisively. The film is based on a true story about an attorney, a defense attorney named Bryan Stevenson, who's fresh out of Harvard. Yeah. And he
based
has
on his book. Isn't it based on his book? Just
yes.
Mercy?
Yeah, this is technically an adaptation. So Bryan Stevenson wrote the book, and it is this true story about when Bryan got out of Harvard, finished law school, became a prosecutor. He had this idea that he was going to fight for death row inmates in Alabama, which, as you can imagine, is a daunting task considering it's the Deep South. And these people, a lot of them never really got a real defense. Lawyers didn't really stick up for them or go the distance with them because the legal system, especially in that area in the Deep South, is just totally stacked against their favor and their well-being. And along comes Bryan Stevenson, who finds this one case concerning Walter McMillan, also known as Johnny D. And as he starts to look into his case, he can't help but notice that it's complete injustice what happened to him. He was clearly wrongfully convicted of murder, and he spends this movie not just trying to help him, but trying to help him and a group of other inmates who clearly they just appear to be there under a complete railroaded system that wants them incarcerated just for the sake of it. This kind of rings of a lot of films we've seen before, a lot of Oscar baity films where a young hotshot attorney will come in and try to stick up for the person who's been wrongfully convicted. We've seen a lot of this. We've seen a really great version of this in the miniseries When They See Us earlier in 2019 from Ava DuVernay, which easily one of the best miniseries of the year. I'd say it's like right up there with Chernobyl as just my favorite. And with this movie, it does a lot of things we've seen before. And I could not help but notice, though, that as I was watching this, the thing that crossed my mind was I was thinking about the people who haven't seen this movie yet. The people who don't know this story, who have not seen civil rights movies in this vein. Okay. And we could probably name a bunch, but I kind of walked away from this being like, I'm really glad this exists. I'm really glad Michael B. Jordan, a recognizable actor that a lot of people recognize, a lot of people champion and want to go see a movie just because he's in it. Same would go for Jamie Foxx and a lot of these other actors, Rob Morgan, Tim Blake Nelson, Rafe Spall, Brie Larson, as we mentioned. and they're going to watch this and they're going to learn a true story, and hopefully it's going to inspire them to do something about this problem. And I walked out of this one pretty favorable on it, but what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, I was mostly favorable, maybe a little less so than you were, but yeah, I mean, I guess for me, it's pretty interesting that this director, he went from making Short Term 12, which is obviously a very like vibrant indie, one that, you know, definitely is elevated by its great character work and its you know, intimate direction and stuff like that. And then since then with The Glass Castle and Just Mercy, has been kind of making the sort of prestige like 90s kind of dramas, which is like, I guess, kind of a step back, but at the same time, he's also making the kind of studio movies that are becoming more obsolete. So I kind of respect that. But with this movie, I definitely appreciate it more than his previous film, The Glass Castle, mainly because I think what it did as far as being an adaptation of that book was just a disgrace, besides strong performances, which I do think in all of his films carries over. But this one, I guess while you were thinking about that, I was thinking more about like, if this movie had come out in like 2014 or maybe like 2016, this probably would have gotten like 5 Oscar nominations. Not because it technically deserves it, I think, but it just seems like the type of film that if it had come out earlier, probably would have gotten a lot more recognition. And now it's just kind of there in a way that I think it's valid. Like, I think it's a well done film, and I definitely think the performances from Michael B. Jordan and Brie Larson and Jamie Foxx, and most notably Tim Blake Nelson, who I think is fantastic in this movie, really stand out, and I think kind of elevate what I find to be a rather perfunctory script. But I guess I didn't really have the same quite as deep emotional resonance with this film as you did.
Yeah, I was very moved by it. I think if I had to analyze this film section by section, I think it does so well to just slowly take its time and bring you into its world.
Oh yeah, I really like the beginning of the film.
Yeah, the beginning is easily the best. I think as you just get to know the characters a bit, there's no courtrooms, there's no like action, flashy, none of that you kind of usually get in Oscar movies, which those are the kinds of movies like they know they're going to be making this for kind of a mainstream audience, and sometimes it's too rushed, right? And in this, it's a bit of a slower burn, and I found myself like just really feeling immersed. I really, really connected with the Rob Morgan performance. O'Shea Jackson, I forgot to mention, as one of the other inmates. And I just felt like these are real people. This was definitely one of those movies where I thought the performances masked the actors themselves, which is always great to see, especially Jamie Foxx. I just think there are some scenes with him where no words need to be said. There was just craft to this, and that's what I liked about it. It's like, I get that the concept is a little bit similar and familiar, but there are resonant themes here that are executed a little bit differently. Like, we don't usually get courtroom drama movies that are this long, where like the courtroom scenes aren't like the big scenes. I think the big scenes, or the more important scenes, I should say, happen throughout. And I'd say like my only issue is I think it's a little rushed toward the end. Like, I think because it's gotten that huge runtime, I did find myself wondering if it would have worked better as a mini series. Funny enough, like When They See Us, where it's like, oh, if they could have drawn this out a little bit more, maybe this would have hit harder. But I do think it hits pretty hard. And then one last thing I'll say that does make this a little bit different from your typical law room, justice, time to kill sort of thing, is that it's very anti-white savior in most respects. I think it does come down to one facet of the movie concerning like they need 1 or 2 white people to step up. But I think throughout, you really feel like this is a story about a black community banding together, and it doesn't feel like all their problems are going to be solved. It's more like their problems are going to be solved by an outsider who is a northern black man coming to the South. And they do touch on that. And I think that's one of the things that is nuanced in a movie that is very heavy handed, which is what I liked. It's like a mix of very preachy drama stuff, but there is some subtlety and nuance you can talk about with people. That's flavored with that. So yeah, that's why I'm mostly favorable. I don't think there's a lot to really nitpick here. So I definitely dug it.
Sure, and I don't disagree with anything you said. I guess for me, I definitely think the direction helped elevate what I found the screenplay lacked. And I think, like you said, I think it's that nuance and that time it took. I especially appreciated, like you're saying, the courtroom scenes kind of having a little more reality to them, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I can't really speak with much certainty on that, but it just felt like these, like, it didn't feel as super movie as a lot of these court scenes typically do. Like, with the exception, maybe like the one court
I was
scene.
gonna mention. Yeah, there might be like one kind of cinematic, but it's for a purpose. It serves a function.
Right. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think performances and direction helped to elevate this one to be maybe not something particularly special in my view, but one that I think would be easier to recommend than some of the other more Oscar baity movies that it might emulate, for better or for worse. But yeah, I thought it was fine. I guess don't have quite of a strong feeling toward it, but I did find myself moved by it by the end and in the beginning, like I said. So yeah, it's well done. I can definitely see why this is such a good director. And it's, I guess, now a little disappointing that he's going to make a Marvel movie after this, just because he's probably going to be in their vein. But what? Oh well.
Maybe it'll be amazing.
Maybe it's going to be like a martial arts movie, right?
Yeah, the Shang-Chi one. So
yeah,
I do want to see that.
Maybe. Yeah, I'm kind of curious. So yeah, I mean, it kind of reminds me of something like a Hidden Life, or not Hidden Life. It doesn't, right? What's that movie? Hidden Figures.
No,
Like
see, I wouldn't compare it to Hidden Figures. I'd say okay, no,
just in the sense that, like, I think it's like fine. Like, I enjoyed seeing that, but
okay,
like with the exception of this, like I haven't really thought about Hidden Figures much, other than like it got a Best Picture nomination, and it was just like, it was a good film. It was pretty good for what it was, but it's not like one I'm gonna be like illuminating on much. And I feel like that's probably what's gonna happen with Just Mercy. Like, I think it was solid. I enjoyed it. I think it's well done, but I don't think it's one I'm gonna be like thinking back upon favorably or otherwise in the future. So I'll give it a solid B minus.
Yeah, I definitely higher up on this one, and I forgot to mention too, one of my favorite pieces of irony in it is the connection to Kill a Mockingbird, which I won't get into, but
they lay it on pretty thick though.
They do, they really do, but I think it really works. I just think like it, yeah. There was something about the way they layer that in, and this feeling that it's the early 90s, but the racism that you experience or you observe in this film feels like something placed in the 60s. I remember just being like, man, yeah, this is such a better film about racism than Green Book, if we're looking at kind of Oscar season films about this subject, where I feel like this film was a little bit more ahead of its time. I know you said it would win a lot of awards, right, in 2014. I think it would have been looked at as a bit more progressive back then. As it is right now, I don't think it's all that progressive, honestly. But,
right, I guess that's what I mean. Like, it seems like type of film that would have been more forward thinking, I guess, in the past, and now it seems like it's kind of like just there.
Yeah, even though we didn't, we haven't gotten that many movies like this since then. But
oh, for sure, yeah.
In that sense, at least. But yeah, I'm much higher. I'm kind of like a low B plus on this. I've waffled between B and B plus. I think what pushes me to B plus is the performances. I think are really effective. What brings me back down is that it's so long, and I can't say the third act is as amazing and wonderful as I want it to be personally. So I'm going to stick with a high B for now. Big fan. I could see that going up a little bit upon a rewatch or two. So
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say something about the pacing of it, though, does kind of linger and hold it back. I mean, because there's like one moment, without giving anything away, where like you think it's going to be like this pivotal point, and then like something like crushing happens. And I think the way that that's executed is really well done. But then like it's just like, well, we still have like 20 minutes left, so this is going to wrap up somehow. And it's like they just kind of rush that to the conclusion. But yeah, I do agree that I do kind of appreciate the slow burn, but I also feel like that might have hindered it in some respects as well.
Maybe it would have been an A if they had said Just Mercy at some point in the movie. They didn't say the words Just Mercy.
Well, they said justice and mercy. Mm-hmm. So you take out the ice.
You only get a B
political.
for that.
This is political, yeah. If you take out the ice, you get Just Mercy.
Wonderful. Okay, that's Just Mercy. We're both in the B range, but it's a hearty B for me, and sounds like a middling B minus for you, but definitely not a film. As you said, you wouldn't hesitate to recommend for the most part.
Middling is a bit strong. I think it's pretty good. Like it's like more fine than good maybe.
Okay.
But I enjoyed it. Like I'd give it like a a hearty B plus or a B minus, like a thumbs up.
Well, that is Just Mercy, and I think the reviews for the most part are fairly positive, and I'm not sure how it's going to fare in terms of awards. I know it got nominated for the SAG Awards, and I think Jamie Foxx was the one who got nominated. But in terms of box office, it's been like 10.5 million so far, I think. So we'll see how it does in the coming weeks. Let's talk, though, about a film that definitely made a little bit more money, but is still kind of flopping, maybe drowning, I guess you could say. And that's a movie called
Tanking.
Underwater.
It's right there. Tanking.
I said drowning.
Sure.
I mean, come on. Underwater. This is a new sci-fi horror film, and it's directed by William Eubank. And his first one was Love back in 2010, 2011, something like that. I didn't see The Signal, the 2014
I heard about
film.
that. I didn't see it, but I heard about it.
Yeah.
That was a Sundance film, right?
Yeah, it was. He's also a cinematographer in addition to directing. But he didn't do the cinematography for this film, which I was surprised to see. It was
kind of shows.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. It was one of Gore Verbinski's guys. I think he's worked with Paul Schrader too, but his name escapes me.
If Gore Verbinski had directed this.
Anyway, Underwater. This is a new film starring Kristen Stewart and Jessica Henwick, John Gallagher Jr., and He Who Shall Not Be Named. I didn't see Underwater. I only had time to see one film this week because I am in the process of big life changes, moving, and marriage proposals, and all kinds of fun stuff. So, will you
just announce it out on the air?
Oh, okay. Well, it's fine. I'm an open book. But
what if she listens to this?
She could. I don't know.
Right.
I think on our first date, she had already listened to an episode of Cinemaholics, and I think it was Incredibles 2. So, if memory serves. But
congratulations if you're listening to this.
Yeah, I would be surprised if Kristen Stewart was listening to this. Sorry.
Sure, yeah. Oh wow. Well, that was a twist.
I was gonna say Jessica Henwick, but as of course Maverick Hines is cinematic crush, so I don't want to steal.
Sure.
But anyway, Underwater. I didn't see it. You did. This is a Fox/Disney movie, and reviews are kind of all over the place. I was curious about this one. I wasn't sure if I should see it over Just Mercy, but what did you think of Underwater, and what's it about?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why I'm sounding so critical of this because I'm actually not that critical of it, but so the film, it's pretty straightforward. It's like you said, Kristen Stewart is a marine engineer. She's on this mission where they're working several feet underground in the ocean. A critical error happens, and a small fleet have survived, and they have to figure out a way to survive these mysterious foes that lurk in the water and is killing everyone one by one. Very much reminiscent of Alien as far as its style and execution. The movie makes no secret of that, even down to the titling of it being pretty similar to how the title card comes up for Alien.
And the trailer, right? Too?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm surprised they didn't do Underwater, no one can hear you scream or something like that.
Right. And even like the Kristen Stewart character looks just like they kind of like dress her up like Ripley, kind of in some of the later Alien films, right?
Well, yeah, it was Alien 3 Ripley, I guess, yeah, because she has like a short, kind of shaped head look,
right?
In this, which she looks good, and it's a good look. Like, I hope not to be derogatory in that, but it's a good look for her.
We support Kristen Stewart in the Cinemaholics community, so if you're not fine with that, you can get out.
Yeah, no,
Not
do.
You,
yeah, absolutely. But anyway, yeah, the film itself, it's interesting because it's one of those movies where it's a film that's made for people who are familiar with B movies, in that it doesn't have like that 20-minute exposition where it's like you learn about the mission and you learn about the crew members and then something terrible happens. It's like literally like 3 or 5 minutes into the film is when the disaster happens, and then you kind of meet the people and get to know them a little bit, but not really. But it's really more a kind of procedural film in that regard, where it's just like stuff's happening. We don't have time for character development and exposition. We just got to get this going, which in the scheme of things, I kind of respect, as far as like just getting in the thick of it early on. Because like a lot of these movies, they do kind of bog things down by incorporating a lot of like heavy exposition in the beginning. And I do admire a film that's willing to just kind of push forward and just be like, you get the gist, let's get going. But at the same time, I don't think the filmmaking here is particularly noteworthy enough to warrant such a brash execution. And I just don't think that, I guess maybe if, I don't know, I'm kind of back and forth on this because I do like the idea of just going headlong into it, but I also feel like if you don't do anything to establish these characters, then it's kind of hard to have any emotional resonance with them when they start getting picked off one by one. And so it's kind of like this catch-22 where it's like, I admire the boldness of the execution, but I also think it's kind of biting its own hand where it's like, you have to respect it, but acknowledge that it's not really helping the movie in the long run beyond like the zippiness of the beginning. And in the end, I felt like I never really had a strong relationship with this film, in that like even I was watching, I was kind of growing more and more disinterested in it, particularly as it kind of gets more cliched, and as they do try to develop Kristen Stewart's character, it's kind of a what's the word, I guess, kind of a generic kind of character turn, particularly towards the end. And I can see why this was probably delayed for quite a few years, because I think they filmed this in like 2017 or something.
Yeah, it was a while back. That's why He Who Shall Not Be Named is in it.
Right. And I'm pretty sure this will be the last. It's TJ Miller, by the way, because it's kind of hard to clarify that, because I feel like there's a lot of people who should not be named right now. So just a little bit of clearance here. But yeah, if you're wondering, he's not in the movie that much. But he is in a decent bit in the beginning. So keep that in mind if you're thinking about seeing it. And yeah. So yeah, I don't know. It's another one of these films where I in some respects I kind of admire that it is an old-fashioned B movie, in that like it does feel kind of quaint in 2020 to have this in a studio franchise cinema, or not so cinema if you're Martin Scorsese, when we're talking about the Marvel movies. But yeah, I guess I'm just kind of so on it. Like I think it's okay for what it is, but I wasn't really enamored with it or entertained by it. And I guess I found myself just kind of wishing it was over by the end of it, even though it's a fairly short movie. I just never really had much of a emotional threshold on it. So, and I wasn't really super entertained enough to let it coast by on entertainment value alone. So I'll give it a C+. Like, it's fine. It's not anything objectively terrible, but I feel like given most of the talent involved and having such a brash opening, that there was room for improvement here. And unfortunately, I found the movie kind of underwhelmed me, if I shall pun.
Yeah, it sounds like you're treading water on your puns this week. But yeah, it's a shame to hear that, but I am still looking forward to the prequels that they're going to make, probably with like Robert Pattinson, like making out with a fish version of himself or something like that. And
like a Shape of Water kind of thing?
No, more of like Prometheus is what I had in mind there.
I get you. Okay.
Yeah. Shape of Water would probably be a little bit, I don't know. Did at the very least, Will, did this movie end with the word on the screen, Finn?
No, if only.
Bummer.
Didn't the Meg do that though?
I think it might have actually, and I forgot. So Underwater.
Maybe they did, and it was just like, damn it.
Maybe
we waited too long.
The movie's not doing super well at the box office. It might have cost about around like $50 to $80 million to make, but it kind of tanked at the box office. See, I was saving it. $14 million in its opening weekend. Not very promising, and I don't know if this film is going to have a lot of legs or maybe tentacles. All right, I'm done.
Sure.
Also, yeah, the reviews are really mixed, kind of like how you're feeling. 53%. A lot of people are just kind of mixed on it. And yeah, the cinema score is like crazy low. Like I was really surprised to see that. It has a C cinema score.
Yeah, well, that's not that low.
That's very low for cinema score.
Well, cinema score, I don't know. I mean, I don't really take much stock in cinema score. What where they traditionally give things A-.
I mean, yeah, basically. Like I think average is like a B+. And so for a film to get a C, that's pretty bad. Like, especially a genre film like this. I don't know. I guess people were expecting something better, but who knows? That's Underwater. And I don't know if this one's going to last too much longer in theaters. But speaking of films that did not come out in the theaters, but would have a few years ago, funny enough,
sure,
at least I believe, is a new film called Togo, which I watched. This one premiered on Disney Plus, but back in, I think it was on the service back in December, like December 20th. So it's been out for a while, and I just am getting to it because of the holidays and that craziness. But in case you're not familiar, this one came out on that streaming service. It's, I think, one of their first originals, and it's actually good. I am happy to say this is a good movie, and I wish I had seen it before the cutoff for 2020. It wouldn't have been my favorite film, or wouldn't have made my honorable mentions probably, but I was pleasantly surprised. This is a film starring Willem Dafoe and Julianne Nicholson and a lovely devil dog named Togo. It takes place in 1925. And you might have heard of a special real-life event that happened in 1925 called the Serum Run to Nome. And the reason you might find that kind of familiar, despite it being 2020, not 2019, is because there's a movie that came out called Balto. You remember Balto, Will?
Oh, absolutely. I remember Balto.
Yeah. Balto was a Siberian Husky sled dog who got the credit for this famous serum run where they had to, during this crazy storm, try to like get this serum and bring it back to this place called Nome in Alaska, which was needed to save a bunch of children who were dying from this disease. And Balto got the credit, but this movie explains why, even though he probably shouldn't have. This is actually a story about the real heroes of that real-life event. And not only is this movie about that, it's not a straightforward narrative. And I should also say, Balto was an animated movie, and that's probably why like we even know about it, because I don't know if it was like that famous before the movie came out or what the deal is with that. But I remember watching Balto growing up. I forget which animation studio made that, because it wasn't Disney, if I recall.
Wasn't it 20th Century Fox?
Might have been. And
no, Universal.
Was it Universal? Okay. Yeah. This movie is a total like reply all to that movie, to Balto, because it's like, all right, let's set the record straight here. The Disney version.
Yeah.
But this film isn't just about, like I was saying before, a straightforward, let's go save kids. It's actually like a really intimate drama about Willem Dafoe, who is this grizzled, seasoned sled dog trainer who throughout this movie has flashbacks to when Togo kind of came into his life and sort of their troubled relationship and how Togo sort of really just took over him. And there's a lot of like animosity between these two characters. There's a lot of him trying to give Togo away. He almost kills Togo when he first meets him and just has nothing but ambivalence. But the movie is about them kind of growing together. And there's actually some subtlety and nuance to how Willem Dafoe sees not just Togo, but his dogs in general, sees them as like work animals, not as friends. And he tries to keep himself shut off to them, which sounds a little bit treacly, but the movie actually executes this really well. Like you kind of understand why he feels the way he does about his dogs without it feeling like he's a monster. He just kind of feels like a grizzled person. There's a lot of exposition explaining like where he comes from, but none of it is distracting. None of it feels like it's heavy. There's a lot of great scenes of the sled team in action that you get to enjoy. So I found myself pretty thrilled by this, and I thought it was a really, for what it is and for what it's trying to do, sort of like re-educate children and adults like me who think they know this story but really don't. It's actually a kind of an entertaining and insightful film in a lot of ways. And there's stuff here to grasp onto besides what you would expect from, at this point, a streaming service that we don't know really what the tone is going to be moving forward between this and Mandalorian. And they really are putting out a lot of different things in order to get people hooked on the service. And if they keep making movies, or in this case, I don't know if they acquired it, or I know this is something they've been wanting, like Disney's been wanting to do this for years. And you could sort of see like, man, this is the kind of movie like Finest Hours, like that kind of thing they would have made like early part of the year.
Oh yeah.
Would have come to theaters, nobody would have seen it. But this seems like a good home for this kind of movie. It's on something that I think is, maybe it would have been amazing on a big screen because some of these shots are incredible. Especially like it looks like they shot on location for a lot of it. But if between the movie existing and not existing, then I'm glad it gets to exist and we can enjoy it on the small screen at least. And whether or not this was clearly shot somewhere just majestic, whether it was probably Canada, not because usually they shoot these things probably around there. But that said, I enjoyed this as a faithful account of what happened. I did look into it, and there are certain things that didn't happen in this movie, but I think it works to pretty good effect. The things that they sort of edited and they put in just to like drive things home. So I recommend it. It's a little long. It's like a little bit short of 2 hours, but it's definitely a film worth racing to your Disney Plus subscription for, which I know will be hard for you, Will, because I don't think you've subscribed, correct?
I don't, no.
Yeah. Maybe someday. Maybe someday you'll join the dark side.
Sure.
Yeah, but I give Togo a hearty B-. So very high B-, but definitely not a film that I think is, remarkable enough that I could pump up even further, but definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, just mercy B- for me, I guess, is what you're qualifying this as.
In a sense, yeah. Yeah. It's just that I can't. There's nothing about the film that's that surprising, so I can't be like it's amazing. Like it's a sort of B- it's a B- in its craft, but enjoyability factor. People might enjoy this like they would enjoy a B+ kind of film. So maybe that'll enlighten. But all right, we have one last film. This is one you've seen, but I haven't, and I'm kind of happy about that because I'm a fan of Miguel Arteta. I am.
Who isn't?
People who don't like Cedar Rapids, I guess, but I feel like that film has some fans. If you don't know, Miguel Arteta is a Puerto Rican director, and he's one of the first directors that I ever saw myself in, right? Because there just aren't a lot of Puerto Rican people in showbiz in Hollywood. And so I've always kind of really looked up to him because his films, like watching them in the 2000s, like Chuck and Buck and The Good Girl, like these are films that I could actually like get me interested in film because I was like, oh, somebody like me could actually do something in film. And then, obviously like I didn't know about other Puerto Rican people in the industry, but I'm a fan. But this movie, after all the trailers, Like a Boss, I couldn't do it. I couldn't watch Like a Boss. Well, I don't want to be upset with Miguel, but what is this movie about? Who's in it? How do you feel about it?
Well, Like a Boss is Tiffany Haddish and Rose Byrne, as well as Selma Hayek and Jennifer Coolidge and Billy Porter. So the premise is basically that Tiffany Haddish and Rose Byrne are nearly lifelong friends. I think they first got to know each other in either middle school or high school. They are independent business owners. They have a makeup company, and they're primarily known for a makeup kit called the One Night Stand, and they have a pretty tight-knit relationship, even being in business together, but they are hemorrhaging money. And at this point, because of the success of the One Night Stand makeup kit, a mogul company owner played by Selma Hayek expresses interest in buying their company and trying to get 51% of creative control. They eventually argue it down to 49%, but if she can find a way to separate these two friends and get at least one of them to drop out, then she will regain the 51% control that she wants in the company. So it's a lot of hijinks that ensue from there, just kind of rivalries and other things like that. And it's a not good movie, unfortunately. And to echo what you were saying earlier, Miguel Arteta is a filmmaker I really respect and like a lot. You didn't really talk a lot about, he did a lot of TV stuff as well, so maybe people might be more familiar with that. But yeah, I mean, going off of some of the ones you said, Chuck and Buck definitely is a movie I love. Good Girl as well. The Good Girl. Youth in Revolt, I enjoy a good bit. Cedar Rapids, I do actually. I really like that movie.
I unironically really like Youth in Revolt. I
was gonna say about that's what I felt about Cedar Rapids, but I also quite enjoy Youth in Revolt as well.
And I should have mentioned Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day was my first press screening. So
it's pretty wild.
And I was on the red carpet, and there was just something awesome about that day. Like I know that film's not great or anything, but sorry, personal stuff.
Sure. Humble bragging there a bit.
Well, in a way that I'm trying to make it obvious, like why I have such a hang up on this director. And it's just like, there's a lot of baggage there, I guess.
Sure. But Yeah, I didn't see Duck Butter, which was a pretty indie film, right? That was like on
Yeah,
Netflix.
it's okay. I don't know.
Sure.
That's another film I was kind of weird about. It's a lesbian romance, and it's got a weird and awkward screenplay. But I think
so it's not Chuck and Buck.
Similar-ish. I think Chuck and Buck is wildly better.
That makes sense. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I wasn't crazy about Patrice at Dinner. Like I thought it was all right. Like it was fine. But considering that it was the like third film that Mike White and Miguel Artero had done together, I thought it could have been a little better given their past relationship as filmmakers. And Alexander and Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day is very meh to me. Like it doesn't, like if you hadn't taken out the director's cut or the director's credit for it and just told me to guess who would directed it, I would not have guessed Miguel Artero because it doesn't really have any of his signature style or anything that seems particularly unique to him.
Well, yeah, but he is doing another film with Jennifer Garner. So
apparently,
I think it's a Netflix film.
Oh yeah. But I was gonna say, in that vein, Like a Boss just very much feels like he's a director for hire mode. I mean, he hasn't really done that many studio movies, but it just seems like whenever he is in studio mode, there's really nothing that makes his work stand out compared to like any other comedy studio director, I mean. So I really didn't feel like any of his influences or any of his creative decisions. And even to that point, like, I don't even know if this was really even meant to be an R-rated comedy initially, because it feels very PG-13 in its execution and style. There's really, the only thing that makes it R-rated is some fairly four-letter words, language, and some sexual jokes are kind of thrown in here and there. But that seems like something they could have done in reshoots. So I don't know if they added that in later on, but it just feels like a movie that's kind of desperate to be liked and won over. And I mean, I think Tiffany Haddish is the producer on this, and I think it's her first time producing. So maybe this is an effort to kind of continue to branch out her brand, but I'd rather see her kind of do some more unique stuff, because it feels like she's kind of running into this repetitious period where she's kind of playing similar characters in a lot of the same comedies. And I think it worked great in Girl Trip. I was going to say Girl Boss, but Girl Trip, because she was part of an ensemble and she could kind of be balanced out by having, being with the ensemble. And I think when she's kind of left to do on her own, it doesn't quite work as well. And that's unfortunate. But I will say this is the first time I've seen Billy Porter in anything as far as I can recall. And he is a Pittsburgh native, so represent. But yeah, he is an extremely charismatic person. Like I can definitely see why he's a huge star now, because he definitely has the star potential. And it's a shame that this movie doesn't really do anything with him. But if this movie did anything, it's made me recognize that Billy Porter is a real deal. And I don't know if that was the intent or the purpose of this movie, but I guess that's something as opposed to nothing. But yeah, this is not a good movie. It's a C-.
So sad to hear that.
Yeah. Only for the Miguel Artero completists, as I told you earlier.
Yeah, I am a big fan of his TV work too. I forgot to mention that he's done episodes of The Office and Freaks and Geeks. But
I was gonna say Enlightened is the main thing I recognize.
I did never see Enlightened.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah, but this is not the first film Tiffany Haddish has produced. She was an executive producer for The Oath.
Oh, was she?
Yeah,
okay.
She was.
I actually kind of liked The Oath. I thought it was all right. I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, and yeah, Tiffany Haddish, I mean, such a funny actor. It just seems like she's dealing with the same thing that Camille Nanjiani is kind of dealing with, where they both had these really good films in 2017. For him, it was Big Sick. For her, it was Girls Trip. And just ever since then, they keep being cast in like these sort of disposable comedies where they don't really take advantage of like their comedic talents as well.
Yeah.
Between like Stuber for Camille and then that Lovebirds movie that looks really not good to me, but yeah.
Oh, is there a trailer for Lovebirds?
Yeah, I saw it right before Just Mercy, and I was really unimpressed. Hopefully it's just a bad trailer, a badly cut trailer.
That's Showalter directed that.
So I was kind of looking forward to it, especially because Issa Rae is in it, and then there's something about that trailer though. I was like, this has like,
that's a shame.
It feels a lot like it feels a lot like Stuber.
Huh.
Just like a studio comedy, thinly veiled, cash grab. So I hope that's not the case though.
Yeah, it's a shame. Oh well. But yeah, it's like the Melissa McCarthy problem. Like she has a similar thing with Bridesmaids, and then she got cast in a lot of disposable comedies, and That's how it goes, I guess. That's
so
Hollywood.
Tiffany Haddish will make a great movie like Can You Ever Forgive Me? But
hopefully.
Then the next year, she was already in The Kitchen, which was like her other dramatic role that just didn't take off.
With Melissa McCarthy, yeah. But that's where they intertwine. Mm-hmm. But yeah, and I was gonna say apparently Tiffany Haddish is gonna be in the new Paul Schrader movie. So maybe that'll be the dramatic push that proves her talents as a dramatic actress. Maybe so. So Like a Boss, not doing well at the box office. It's a low budget movie, just around $30 million or so to make, but it only made $10 million at the box office. It's like mid budget, right? 30.
Yeah. So it'll probably make some of its money back, but I don't think this is going to do all that well. It is doing better than I think it probably would have. Or I think it's doing okay for an R-rated film, to what you were saying. If it was PG-13, I could imagine it'd probably be more like 15 million, who knows? But it's also a very short movie too, so it's probably playing on a lot of screens. So it's like, gosh, like an hour, 20 minutes or something like that. So yeah, it's, if you're in the mood for a disposable comedy, I don't know. I guess, yeah, you have to be a McGill completionist. Cinema score is a B, by the way. I looked that up, and a B. See, that's what I mean, Will. Like a movie like this gets a B. What does a movie have to be to get a C, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, didn't Uncut Gems get like a D on cinema scores?
Mother got like an F, so.
They don't know what they're talking about then.
Well, that's just, of course, if you don't know cinema score, it's kind of a measure. It only, I think, happens in like certain markets, mainly in LA.
Like New Mexico, I think, right?
Is it New Mexico?
I thought it was like close to Las Vegas.
There's a bunch of them, I think, or I think they've expanded it, so there's more than one. But I think it used to be in LA only, and they just pull people as they leave the theater. It's like, hey, did you like it? And it's really just based off of like how many people liked it or would recommend it, that kind of thing. So
surprised we didn't talk about this. Cinema score, for the 20th time in history, they gave The Grudge an F.
Yeah, I was surprised to see that. I mean, man, that movie must be some kind of bad. Yeah, I think there's a very short list of films that have gotten an A+. I think it's like fewer than 100. But actually,
didn't Just Mercy get an A+?
It did. Forgot to mention that. Just Mercy. I think, let's see, Just Mercy got an A+. Avengers Endgame got an A+. I think Peanut Butter Falcon did, and Ford versus Ferrari. Yeah, a lot of 2019 films did. Probably more than the last few years. I think like I remember one of the worst years for cinema score was 2017. There was only like a couple that got it. But I think actually 2014 was pretty bad too. I think there was only like 2. But anyway, that's Like a Boss.
Yeah.
What a weird week.
Did I give my grading for that?
I don't remember actually.
It was a C-, I think. If I didn't say that earlier, that's what I meant.
Yeah, C-. I feel like I'm just in a mode right now where I feel like we're in such a weird transitional period.
Sicko mode?
Yeah, sort of. But that's actually a decent transition into our plans for next week, because Doolittle's coming out, as well as Bad Boys for Life. Now, I have a crazy month ahead.
Is that a transition because Doolittle's in sicko mode?
No. I was going to say I'm in a mode because Sundance is about to happen.
Oh, I got you.
So
okay.
I'm going to be in like crazy town, not Sundance itself, but like my mindset will be crazy town for the next few weeks. And I don't know exactly what we're going to do. Hopefully we're going to have probably an episode where I might not make it to the show. And hopefully, Will, you'll be able to hold a fort while I'm gone, if that's the case. I want to try to do fun things, but I don't know if we're going to do like an Oscars episode. We got a couple ideas tossed around for how we want to do the Oscars this year. So a lot going on, but should be a fun time.
We'll figure it out.
All right. That'll do it for this week's show. Thanks as always for listening. Don't forget, if you want to hang out with us on our social pages, all that information is in the show notes. And don't forget, you can go to cinemahawks.com, comment on the episode if you want to ask us anything, or just, let us know what you thought of these films that we discussed. So for now, we'll see you next week from the Internet California. I'm John Agroni.
And from the Internet Pennsylvania, I'm Lash.
See you next time.